All right, how's everybody doing? Everybody hear me way in the back? Because I hate microphones, but I understand we're trying to also put it online. First off, foremost, this is not meant to be formal. I hate the fact that I'm standing behind a podium, but it was the easiest way to get you all in here. And I meant what I said the other day. I see this whole thing as a family operation. You know, our community is one big family. You guys enable that family. And so part of that is getting to know a little bit of me and how I think, not because I wanted to make this the all about me show, but when we're talking about stuff in the future, you can say like, okay, well, I understand where Dixon's coming from. This is kind of how he thinks. So I apologize. It's not going to be a whole lot of wisdom and like I got things figured out. It's going to be showing you a little bit where I came from, what generates thought processes for me, so that when we start talking about our services or how we could improve or ideas that you guys have in the future, and I say something, hopefully it puts me back into context and it's not a negative context, right? So I'm trying to like give you guys a little exposure of personality through this in brief, all right? So with that, we'll start with the first, is the red button here? Which one we go here? There we go. So I'll give you a little bit of how I think, what I think of when I think of the garrison role. And of course, you guys are going to educate me over the entire 2 years that we're here because you're well more versed in the garrison role than I am, but this is kind of my starting point. And then what to expect from me when I go into our functions and how we might adjust fire in the future. So first and foremost, where did I come from? So I grew up in central New York. My first assignment here, when I first arrived, you know, my folks were asking me, what's it like? I had visions in my head of Alps down south. I did not think of the vast rolling farm terrain that is Germany. And so I said, well, geez, it's a lot like where we grew up in central New York. So it became blatantly obvious to me why central New York has a ton of former German families, Dutch families, and all that sort of, it's like German-Dutch country and farmland in central New York. So I identify with at least the environment of Germany that way. Lots of farms, like it says up there. My mother's family's Canadian, so I've got a lot of family in Canada. And so I see both sides of the equation, U.S. and not U.S., when I get into family conversations at home. And then when it came time to leave to go to school, I decided by point to move to some place that I really wanted to be in. So I moved to Golden, Colorado, where I went to school. Mountains became home, and so very excited to come back here to the German area and be a part of you know, a mountain country again. So yeah, I, like you, I think, will spend a lot of my times exploring the countryside. When we get into winter, I'm going to want to be down in the mountains. That's just my personality. I married my wife, Ashley, almost 21 years ago. At my first assignment in Louisiana, where there are no mountains, and I hated every minute of it. She knew it, but she was wanting to get on the adventure of the Army and go out and see the rest of the world just like me. And then she has her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, and she put that on hold in 2017 when we started getting more involved with Army community because of the rank structure and positions we were at. She's like, this is just too much for me to try to be involved with ACS and other things and raise our kids, so let's just put the nursing thing on hold. And then I have had 2 long-term overseas assignments for this one. First one was in Korea. We went right from Korea to Germany here, 2004, and our oldest was born here. And so you see we've got 4 kids. Our oldest, Juliana, but she demanded that we call her Julie this year. She thought it was way too formal. And then we have Ethan, our 14-year-old. He's already huge and likes to remind me of that he's taller than me. And then our 3rd child, Eliana, also Ellie, 5 years old, adopted from South Korea. And then our most recent addition, Jasper, a year and a half, also from South Korea. And so that dynamic in the household means I have to constantly change my language. Am I talking to a teen? Am I talking to someone who really just doesn't want to hear anything I have to say? So that makes it really fun. And I'm hoping that gives me skills to talk to the community when people don't want to hear anything that I want to say. So and we're going to start with, okay, so I believe a lot in identity. How do you identify yourself? How do you function when things start to go wrong or when you're in uncomfortable situations? So you see in the bottom right corner, I've got this thing down there that I said oak rings. And that comes back to my mentality of resilient people know who they are in their center when they were this small little tree, and then oak rings build out from that. And the anecdote I have is we're sitting there in college one year, this huge old oak tree on the campus. And everybody's talking about that tree's been here since way before the college was here. That is the landmark of this area. It's the oldest thing around. So they made this big, huge deal out of determining how old that oak tree was. So this big media event, they come out with one of those drills where you can tap into the tree and then count the rings of the little sample. You imagine there's like a band playing, right? They start drilling into this thing, and about 2 inches in, the drill operator falls forward all the way into the tree. And they realized this thing was 100% hollowed out. It was about to fall down under its own weight. And so then that next event was, let's cut this thing down. So why do I say that? If you're not looking at your own oak rings, how do you define yourself at the center of your personal identity? Then when crisis comes, you have issues because you don't have something to fall back on. So I'm going to tell you how I define myself so you can see where I'm coming from. I see myself as a God-fearing Christian first, then a husband, then a father, then a soldier, from the inside out. Now, I've had a lot of commands where guys go, oh, sir, you shouldn't say that, because not everybody in the room has your belief system. Like, I understand that. But what do you get from that if you are not the same belief system as me? You know that I'm telling myself I answer to a higher power that tells me I have to treat everyone in this room like my brother or sister because they are. And I have to operate out of grace and patience and love and kindness for all those around me. And that's where I operate from, regardless of your belief system. And then I know I have a responsibility to my wife first, then to my kids, and then to the Army. And so it puts things into perspective for me when I start thinking about our families that we're supporting here in the garrison, that they have responsibilities to their families first. And that's why you'll hear me say families a lot. But the other way to look at it, if you go the old pyramid structure, a lot of people like to say, like, you know, what's the majority of your time? And all that. You got the center there is my core, my faith, and then everything else branches out from that. And what I believe I've gotten from that over time, like I mentioned earlier, if I start with my Christian values, I say that gives me my golden rule, my accountability, that ultimately someone's going to hold me accountable even if you guys don't. And then I come down to husband, I understand I have to think of others first, I have to be compassionate, active listening. Come down to a father, I have to have patience, coaching, hope. And then I come down to being a soldier, that all builds on each other to give me that strong foundation of how do I view the perspective, endurance, and perseverance of our organization and how it helps those around us. Now, you already heard where I came from, Colorado School of Mines. If you haven't heard of it, it's an engineering school. A lot of people who talk big things and then can't function in society, so that really, was a crutch for me. But it means that I started with my left brain. I have an engineering mindset. I think about logical flow. Do things make sense? Do they add up? But my personal life, I'm very much a kid at heart. Oh, it also means as an engineer, you can't memorize jack. So I think anybody in here who's ever had anything to associate with DPW and everything else is like, oh, well, let me check my fact sheet, right? Now, my other side of my brain, I am a Star Wars nut. I am movie fanatical. I'm a big kid inside. We went to Disney World with my 2 older kids, and I was going to do the fast pass. My wife got ticked off. She's like, you can't leave me here with 2 kids, because I got distracted. I saw like the Jack Sparrow stuff, and I went off and did stuff, right? So I come back, and she's like, you're just yelling at me. And I paused, and I said, but when I'm here, you've got 3 kids. And of course, my 2 oldest kids started laughing and like, Mom, he's right. It's like, you just got to deal with that. So that's how I am. So I will always be joking. I'll always be sarcastic. But those 2 brains are always fighting with one another. And so that means I usually try to force myself to stay on topic. So if I'm talking to you and you start on one topic and you jump to the other side of the equation or some other topic, I'm going to say, look, man, I have a brain that's like a waffle. We were in a square, and you jumped to a completely different square, and you lost me. Come back to the first square. I make tons of mistakes, so I hope you'll have grace and forgiveness for me. I am terrible with names and context, just awful. It's like God decided early on, like, I'm going to give you the monumental flaw that you will forget every name and face that you ever see, and it's painful, and it's out of context. So I may have talked with you all day, and then we went out for the weekend, and we found ourselves at the same beer fest, and be like, hey, sir, what's going on? And be like, oh, God, what is that person's name? So I will work on it. Just have patience with me. I get better with time, but I do have that flaw. And then the ambivert thing. So I had the benefit of going to one of those few Army opportunities where they go, let's go do this leadership forum thing. And they sit up and they do these, you know, what kind of personality are you? And you all heard these, like, are you an extrovert or are you an introvert, right? They had like this 100-question thing, and I was right in the middle. And I said, what the hell does that mean? And so this big psycho person sits down and says, well, that means that you like to be introverted. You love watching movies and reading books and being by yourself, but you know you have to be extroverted, and you will do that at your job, but it will drain the life out of you, which is true, okay? So I'm talking to you guys right now. I do it all day long, and I go home, and I'll sit down and flop, and Ash will be like, what is up? I said, babe, I've been extroverting all day. I am spent. I don't have another 2 words to put together. If the kids want to, like, eat ice cream and smoke cigarettes, I'm probably going to say yes, so I'm dangerous. Just put me over there. And she says, okay, I got it. Unfortunately, she's the same way. So if she's out doing, like, the Army spouse thing, she'll come back, and if we have those 2 days together, then stay away from our house because something's going to burn to the ground. So that's how I see myself, all right? I know that was a lot, and I'm sorry that it was all about me. But this is how it generates how I think about Garrison. I'm going to do a little bit of what I hope we don't do a lot of. I'm going to look over my shoulder because you all be doing a lot, and it's a fire hose, and so I'm doing this at the last minute. But as a Garrison, I truly do believe we are the cardiovascular system that keeps the Army going. Every service you provide, every touch point you have with our soldiers, civilians, retirees, host nation, you guys as host nation workers with the Army, all of us, it's all about keeping that life flow of blood pumping. And so when I think about that, I think, are we making life livable? At each touch point, does that person walk away feel like this portion of my life that was kind of complicated before is now better? And if we have those moments where we say, like, oh, not really, then maybe we take another look at how we do it, or we take a pause and we hand somebody off to the coworker and say, hey, look, I'm having a moment right now. Let's this person that's shouting on top of my desk, can you handle this person? Long-term wide impacts, we've got 4 levels that we touch here at Ansbach. You got your community, you got the tactical level, the people flying helicopters pissing off our neighbors every day, right? We've got the operational stuff because we have the rotational forces, and then strategically as a force projection platform. So all of those levels are going to have an influence and a question on how we do things. And then the strategic environment, we are home in the backyard of someone else's home. Power projection I already mentioned. Potential hub for evacuation of civilians if something goes wrong, awry, right, and we start having to getting people out of here. And then we have an ambassador-like responsibility. All that to say, what you do is important, and I think you've heard that before. I want you to hear from me. Like, I think it's immensely important, and I am grateful for everything that you guys do on a daily basis. Our priorities that you've had from the last chain of command, not changing, okay? So don't think like I'm coming over here and upturning the cart or throwing out the basket. Leadership, this is kind of how I think through on what we do as leaders in our particular expertise, as leaders of our community. No gatekeepers, right? We got open doors. I know the Army says, hey, Dixon, you're going to have an open door policy. Absolutely I do. But more often than not, even amongst our civilian teams, I'm going to say, well, did you talk about this with your supervisor before you came to me? Did you talk about this with your left or right on different installations? Not because I don't want you to come in my office, but I just want to know, did we try to solve this at the lowest area possible? Does that make sense to everybody? And some head nods. The deputy, the command sergeant major, right now, First Sergeant Henderson, and myself, we're a command team. We're not going to step on each other's toes, but as things get talked about between you guys and them, just understand that we're, it's like being married. We're going to talk about everything with each other. The directors, they're the leads. The command team, we're going to have different points of view and different perspectives from time to time, and that's good. That brings diverse conversation into solutions moving forward and things that we need to resolve or things that we need to change as Ansbach and our supported community starts changing. I will ask a lot of questions everywhere I go. And I think you saw this, the initial email that I sent out through the deputy. Please don't think of my questions as trying to stump the chump, or me trying to say, like, I know something you don't, and I'm trying to catch you. No. Like, if I'm asking a lot of questions because I'm trying to understand better so I can be the garrison commander better. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then on the right-hand side, and these, we'll share these publicly so you guys can all see this. This is, again, how I see, how do you balance your job, your responsibilities, or a leader? How do you balance out basically getting after it and also being approachable? So confident but humble, calm but not robotic, attentive but not obsessive. Those are all balancing words, and you can look at them later. All right, our relationships matter. We had our change of command. We have, dignitaries come from off post. How we treat our dignitaries matters. And I know we had one person that wasn't happy. So now we're spinning up trying to say, like, okay, so how do we go readdress that person's concerns, right? But it's the same with every single person that comes to your service, your desk, whatever. How are we trying to make sure that we have this mentality of how can I help? And I think I'm not saying anything you haven't heard before. Management, we're people too. So when I sit in the command team and we start talking about the calendar, the first thing I'm going to probably ask almost every time is, how is this impacting our work week? How is this impacting our members of our team? Oh my gosh, we have to do this. Okay, so how are we shifting hours around? Oh, there's a 4-day. Soldiers are going to surge and want everything on the Thursday before the 4-day. How are we managing our time to make sure that we get our weekends protected and that sort of thing? So I'm always conscious of that. Staying ahead of the units, and they're 1/3, 2/3. If we know about a problem, we only take 1/3 of the time to solve it ourselves. We give them more time to respond to us. Resource management. When we start talking about our budgets and our plans for the future, what I'm typically going to come down to, I'm going to start asking, how can we get 2 birds, 1 stone? How can we get 3 birds, 1 stone out of this? So 2 furs and 3 furs. It's one of those phrases that I typically use. How can we get more out of this? Or how can we look at this differently? We've done it this way every time. It's done all right. Can we look at it different and not put additional man hours on ourselves or break our own budget or sacrifice some other service we've been providing? And then options. I love it when people come up with ideas. Just please always bring something that has a legitimate choice between the ideas, not like, here's this really good one and then here's these 2 that I know you're not going to pick. That will just send me into a, hey, no, we're gonna have to dig deeper. This is the one that I want you to just look at later on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this is how we communicate visually with the people around us. Simple is always best. Posters, flyers, information. If you've got something that you're handing to a newcomer and saying, this is how you do something, how can you make it as simple as possible, as readable as possible? I'm always looking at that sort of stuff. And then I already talked about relationships. But I will tell you, I want you to enjoy your time off, the directors to enjoy their time off, me to enjoy my time off. And so, yeah, if I go on weekend or whatever, if it's something important, I'm hoping it's a phone call, because I'm not going to be staring at my phone looking at texts and emails all weekend long. Face-to-face is always better. Again, build those relationships with each other, pick up the phone. And at times when we're getting something from IMCOM Europe, this is, phrase that's never steered me wrong. Sometimes you got to know when to beat the drum to get your team going, and sometimes you just got to know when to row. And so there's going to be times where we just have to row. The last comment on the bottom right, just a reminder, especially we're talking about the outside community or the bigger services that come and provide stuff for us. Emails, digital communication, they are forever, right? So make real sure every time you send something, that's exactly what you wanted to say. Everybody tracking? All right. So plans and operations, I've hit on this a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of stuff from IMCOM Europe. This is me speaking more to the directors, and then you guys to understand. Everybody's saying let's operationalize something. I'm going to always ask, what does that mean? I mean, what are we actually doing that actually makes us an operation? And then when we talk about The levels of solutions, what I'm saying is there's going to be times budget-wise, I've already had some conversations with DPW, we're looking at the bigger picture of building something. Is there a level that we can build this now in a certain budget and then say that's the level 1 completion and then add to it later to try and stay within the means that we're given. Being dependable and staying specific. I hate the terms of they say this or I believe or we could, we should. I like specific answers. And so I'll be nice about it. I'm always I'll lead the dog a little bit. Like, who said that? You know, who does that person work for? And I'm always about asking, how can we get to yes on something? So if you're doing something in security, safety, DPW, HR, something, and somebody gives us the answer of no up front, I'm going to say, does that person have the authority to give us an exception? Or is that just the desk person that answers the phone? So help me find the person that can actually give us the yes answer. And then and some of the teams already seen this, if you've got a key thing that we're about to go try to coordinate with another agency or take to IMCOM Europe, what works best with me is just a little huddle desk side, my door's open, hey, sir, we come talk about this, and then I get to ask questions back and forth, and we're not wasting time emailing to each other and miscommunicating. All right, bottom line. What do I want to see or hope that we would want to see over the next couple of years? When we look at everything that we're doing, are we asking the basic questions of, does this work? Can it work better? What would it cost in time and opportunity or money to make it work better or be different? My desires for us is that we're always growing and trying to do things better, not just change for change's sake, but if we see something like, hey, this actually work a little bit different. Because I have the basic motto, if you're not learning and growing, then you're dying. You're like that tree that I described in the early part that's got the hollowed out center. So the last quote on the page was something General Milley used to say back when he was a lot less ranked than he is now. You know, at the end of the day, he'd look at his team and go, all right, guys, gals, great job today. Let's make all new mistakes tomorrow. And that's really how I see my life. Like, we're going to make mistakes. I need you guys to tell me when I've made a mistake, and then just say, like, okay, we're only going to make new ones tomorrow. We learned from it. So I know there was a lot of words on those slides. I wanted to kind of give you a once over the world on me, hear my voice, and now any questions you may have. Besides, what was that pop of his carbonated water? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Anglo or French Canadian?
Say that again?
Anglo or French Canadian?
Anglo, yeah. Although, like, the half of my family that has realized that there are more opportunities for French Canadian are now embedding their kids in full immersion French school. And I've come across other Canadian officers who said the same thing, like, I've gone as far as I'm going to go because I'm not French. So it's been interesting to hear their sides of conversations. And then some of my family's all the way on the West Coast, and their thing is, wow, it's a changing world with, they don't call their original inhabitants Native Canadians. They used to say that, now they say First Nation. And so the changing dynamics on the West Coast of First Nation and the political parties and the ruling bodies and how that's changing different laws and stuff in the land. So it's interesting to see from the outside. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you.
Will we be able to get a copy of your slides?
Yep. I'm going to make sure that those are widely available, and I'm sorry for shouting in the microphone. That's me just being a retarded guy. But yes, I will post these. For the most part, anything that I say that is way of business or policy or how I view things, you guys are going to have access to. What else? All right, go ahead.
How you doing, sir? Professor Jackson.
I'm good.
Human resource. So, simple question.
Yeah.
How you enjoying the journey? Is it the first time here, or?
I really am enjoying it, and no, it's not my first time. So it's been 15 years, so a lot of things have changed. And we were in Hessen before. We were up northwest of Frankfurt in Friedberg. My oldest was born here. I say I enjoyed my time in Germany the first time, but Ashley will tell you, she's like, Aaron didn't live in Germany. Like, he was training all the time, or he was in Iraq and he wasn't here. Like, she lived in Germany for 3 years. But for the times that I was at home, man, we were all over the place. And so we were really excited to come back. Talked it up a lot with my oldest, and she goes, you keep saying all these things. I don't remember any of it, because she was barely 2 when we left. She knows what she knows from pictures. But yeah, enjoying it, loving it. Can't wait to get some cooler weather, because I've been stationed at Hood twice, and I can't stand the heat. I love Texas, but I can't stand the heat. I don't know if those two things fit together. So yeah, looking forward to ski season and everything else, and glad that, at least for now, we're kind of COVID free, right? So keep praying that that's the truth, so we can continue to enjoy the countryside. What else? Yeah.
Sir, 3 things. Do you enjoy more PowerPoints or more talking?
I enjoy more talking, but PowerPoint, I believe, focuses attention if it's done in a simplistic manner. If it's the eye chart from hell, I don't like it. We deal in a lot of complicated subjects here, right? When we're talking money and plans, or like personnel numbers at HR or whatever. So if you are gonna give me a detail-centric slide, then all I ask is direct my attention, because the little butterfly Aaron will go all over that map, and I'll be reading stuff way ahead of what you're talking about. So you're like, sir, top left corner, this is what we're talking about right now. Like, okay, you got my attention. I will stay there. Yeah. All right, what else? Yep.
What was your first impression when you first arrived here of the garrison? First impression of post?
Yeah, first impression. I think the first thing that came to mind was, because we came right on to Katterbach, right? So the first thing that came to mind was, this is a little bit smaller than I thought it was, knowing the population size. The second thing, I'd say the second most impactful thing was, everywhere we went, everybody was smiling and happy and telling me how much I was gonna love it here. So I had those two things side by side, and that's basically shaped everything else that Ashley and I have looked at. It's small, but everybody loves it. So we've got to figure out where that special sauce is coming from, right? Not that we had a counter impression, we want to tap into it because everybody else has. And then the only, what we would have called downfall, I think you've heard other people complain about, is the fact that, we are the 9 conserves kind of spread out. In Friedberg, man, we enjoyed the crap out of being able to walk out the gate and go straight to the restaurant, the pub, the bread store, the whatever. And so I am very much in tune with, I know the common complaints we have about pedestrian gates and how can we get better access down in Ansbach proper and that sort of thing. And so within reason and monies and stuff that we have, yeah, my heart's gonna say, how can we tackle some of these wants and desires? So, all right, what else? All right. Don't want to keep you here longer than I have to. Thank you for coming down. Thank you for everything that you do. Please stop by when you feel like you got something you want to talk about. And we'll continue to work Ansbach for the better over the next 2 years and live life together. All right? Thank you.